does it even matter if our players necessarily like us? Because I think it'd be very easy to make them all like you, but that would then conflict with getting them to win and improve.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of what are your thoughts on that whole idea of how your players should even perceive you? Is it necessary for them to like you? And is it even a detriment if they just simply like you?
Yeah, oh, it's a great, another great question. Yeah, Brian Clough, isn't it? He got, we all like to be liked, but show me someone who's liked by everyone, and I'll show you someone who's wrong. And that's like one of the greatest quotes of all time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance, Josh. Like, I think, obviously you hit the nail on the head there, the growth aspect of it. And I think we are in the growth business in college. Like, that's something I'm learning every year, and it's even as important as results is that your team's growing and the people are growing. And growth is uncomfortable, and because these players are not educated in what growth is or experienced in what in accelerated growth, they're not then as open to it as they want to be, and they don't have the biggest factor for me is that the parents aren't here, so that to facilitate any discomfort or unhappiness. So you've got the player themselves can be feeling isolated with that growth. So the analogy I would use is that you're pushing them off a cliff, but someone has to catch them at the bottom. And
right.
if my relationship is like there's about I would say like eight players in my squad that I think that are drink the Gary Kool-Aid, that think I'm great and blah blah blah. So I can push those players. The other players that are like some are on the fence and some are probably anti-Gary and whatever. Those players there, I have to be very very careful to how their growth process is, because I if I push them and there's no like it's just on broken ice, then they're going to fall through or they're going to get to the bottom and nobody's going to be there to catch them. So I think that the answer is that you have to know your players. Self-awareness is like the biggest key, I think, for coaches these days, because as I was just saying it yesterday on the webinar, the pre-season stuff is like the days are gone where you can say to your team, you might not like me, but you have to respect me.
Right.
They have to like you today, like, because otherwise they're not going to do half of what you say. So, right. But if you're going to push, I think you have to have a system in place where, and our system is like, our system is twofold. One, I'm getting better at the relationship side slowly, maybe, but I'm getting better at it. And then the second part is the staff. I think we've got a staff who are savvy in the psychology of the game, in terms of like, this player's getting a little bit too much here, and can we hold it back on this player? So rather than a physical level, a mental level, and be like, okay, she needs a little bit of, she might need a coffee. Like even my office is getting redone to try. Like, I'd never thought I'd be at this doing stuff like this, but like I'm moving desk. Like right now in my office, my desk sits across from like directly in a straight line with my players, and it looked like and that's so our like Donna came in and was like, here, that's not conducive to a player becoming comfortable and coming in to talk about things. So bringing a couch, bringing a plant, and I thought it was Phil Neville was on it was the Graham Hunter podcast a couple of months ago, and he was talking about when he came in to talk to Ferguson, and when Ferguson called a meeting with a player and he wanted to put a point through, when you were getting stuff thrown at you, you sat in the chair across from the manager. But if you called a meeting about playing time, or if you had a problem, he just walked you into the boardroom and sat you down on the couch and was cozied up beside you and was giving you. I just thought that's just and that's where I've been way off the mark with that. So the relationships is such a key, but I think it's just every player is different, and it's a moving piece all the time, isn't it? Like there's a player who you think they might be on your side, that you might think that that one of 8 players is all about Gary, but it might just be that player is all about playing time. Wrong, but I think right. You need a thermometer, and your thermometer has to be someone who's emotionally not as checked in as you are that player, which is an assistant coach or in our case, a lot of times it's our team therapist, Donna.
Well, so Gary, the other thought that's in my head now is you mentioned you want to improve on the relationship side, but I think one of the, if I call it a disadvantage to that, is now it's harder on you when you have to make tough decisions, because if Susie really well and she's such a great girl, and that can bias you now when you say, yeah, but she's not performing, and do I take her out of the starting 11? So how do you use the staff around you, and do you think that the best model is, as a head coach, to be a little bit more distant, but use your assistants and employ them to be more the arm around the shoulder type people? Or do you think it's necessary as a head coach to still have those close relationships?
Yeah, I think it's necessary. Like, I think with that mindset is probably, I think we've moved away from that. Maybe it's just my personal journey where I'm moving away from that. But I would say that as a head coach, I would say I probably went a bit colder in my early years, maybe because I was younger, a bit closer connected to the players in terms of age, and now I'm getting older and they're staying the same age. So it's like I can be a bit more of the relationship side, and I think when it comes to picking that team, like I have a decent gauge of, I can pick a team without getting emotionally engaged, because I want to perform and I want to try and win games, and that's just what I'm conditioned to do. But that emotional piece that you're talking about, where I struggle with that, is the player that doesn't have the role that they want to have, and is not, and is working hard every day. And that's just, in the college game, that's maybe number 23, 24. Maybe they're just making a travel roster one week. Maybe they're not making the next. And it's nothing to do with work rate. It's nothing to do with attitude. It's straight up, a numbers game. Someone's performing better than that player. And I really struggle with that conversation, because like I'm so careful of, like, I love you to bits, but maybe she's a bit better than you in this here, and I'm right. Like, I talk about that with my staff all the time. Like, is it wrong to be that truthful to a player, to say, like, this is the reality, like, she scores goals, you don't? Or should you be honest, like, she's doing it, you're not, and then kind of almost build it up to where you're trying, because you don't, like, you're still trying to keep them on board, so it's not a perfect scenario. You're still, there is, like, you can't be 100% honest with your players.
Right.
There's a different podcast. Like, you just can't do it, because otherwise, how many percent of them would check out? So you have to be like, you do have to manipulate the truth, so to speak, and say, like, all right, then, you're not far away, and you have to do all that there just to keep the player on board.
Yeah, it's actually so funny you say that, because I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, and I don't know what the guy does, but I just remember his name was Tony Schwartz, and he talked about kind of that line of what you just said. If you use a character trait or something too much, it can actually become a disadvantage. And the example he used was honesty. That if you use honesty too much, it becomes cruelty. Mm-hmm. So it almost transitions. So you have to kind of understand, as a coach or any leader, where the line is, because, like you said, if you are 100% honest with your players, I mean, now you're dipping into cruelty, and that has other side effects to that.